They smiled at you, and then they destroyed you with a single sentence. And the worst part? You stood there, silent, shrinking, wondering what just happened to you. What if I told you that there are specific words, psychologically engineered words, that stop a narcissist cold, not words that start a war, words that end one, words so precise, so emotionally calibrated that a narcissist's entire system of control collapses the moment you say them. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will never walk away from that conversation feeling small again. And I want you to think right now, think of the one person in your life who consistently makes you feel like you are never quite enough. The one who twists your words, the one who takes credit for your victories and assigns you the blame for their failures. The one who, no matter how much you give, always leaves you feeling like you gave the wrong thing. Got that person in mind? Good. Keep them there. Keep them. Because everything I'm about to tell you was built for exactly that relationship. Now let's begin with something most people never talk about, the actual psychological architecture of a narcissist's power over you. A narcissist does not control you through brute strength. They control you through emotional precision. They are, whether they know it consciously or not, masterful readers of human vulnerability. They have spent their entire lives learning, through instinct, through trial, through relentless practice, exactly which emotional buttons to press, in exactly which sequence to keep another person off balance, dependent, and silent. They know that if they praise you just enough, you'll work for more. They know that if they criticize you at the moment you feel most proud, they can fracture your confidence at its peak. They know that public humiliation silences faster than private cruelty. And they know, perhaps most powerfully, that your empathy is a door they can walk through whenever they choose. This is not accidental. This is a system, and like every system, it has vulnerabilities. The fundamental vulnerability of a narcissist is this: their entire identity is constructed on the outside. A healthy psychological self is built from the inside, from a stable sense of worth that doesn't require constant external validation. A narcissist has no such foundation. They built their identity outward, like a wall with no room behind it. Beautiful to look at, hollow to live in. This means they are perpetually dependent on what psychologists call narcissistic supply. The attention, the admiration, the fear, the submission, the reactions of other people. Without it, they do not simply feel bad. They feel non-existent. And that terror of non-existence is the crack in the wall. That is where your power lives. But here's the critical distinction most people miss. You cannot fight a narcissist with anger. You cannot shame them into decency. You cannot out-argue them because they are not playing the game of logic. They are playing the game of emotional dominance. The moment you raise your voice, you've handed them exactly what they need. You've become reactive. Reactive people are controllable people. What disarms a narcissist is not heat, it is clarity. It is the calm, composed, psychologically grounded response that signals, without a single harsh word, that you are not available to be their supply today or any day. And now, let's get specific. The first category of words, the mirror shift. When a narcissist insults you, demeans you, or subtly undermines you, the instinctive response is to defend yourself. That's the trap. The moment you defend, you're confirming their frame. That their judgment of you requires a response, that their opinion holds enough weight to destabilize you. Instead, you use what I call the mirror shift. You redirect the conversation back to them, not aggressively, but with calm, curious inquiry. Say this: that's interesting. What made you say that? 4 words, or some version of them, and watch what happens. The narcissist expected an emotional reaction. They were positioned to receive it, to feed from it, to escalate from it. Instead, they receive a question, a calm, curious, entirely non-defensive question that suddenly places the spotlight back on them and their behavior. This works because it violates their script. In the narcissist's internal playbook, they attack, you react, they escalate, they win. The mirror shift introduces a step they didn't write. It forces them to explain themselves. And narcissists deeply instinctively resist explaining themselves because explanation implies accountability. You can deepen this technique. After they answer or stumble trying to answer, you say, I see. And is that the kind of conversation you want us to be having? This second layer does something remarkable. It introduces the concept of choice. It implies that there is a better kind of conversation available, one that requires their conscious decision to pursue. It treats them not as a predator, but as a person capable of choosing differently. This is psychologically disarming because it neither attacks nor submits. It elevates. The second category, the boundary statement. Here is where most people completely collapse. They have been taught through family, through culture, through years of people-pleasing training, that setting a limit is an act of aggression, that saying no is unkind, that asking for respect is demanding. And the narcissist in your life has reinforced every one of those false beliefs deliberately, repeatedly, expertly. Let me give you the words that rewire that dynamic entirely. When a narcissist is doing something unacceptable, talking over you, dismissing your feelings, lying to your face, manipulating the people around you, you say in a level, unhurried voice, I'm not willing to continue this conversation while it's happening this way. Notice what this sentence does not contain. It contains no accusation, no raised accusation of, you always do this, no emotional explosion, no begging them to stop. It simply states with absolute clarity what you are and are not willing to participate in. The power of this statement is found in its structure. It begins with I, which means it is a declaration of your position, not an attack on theirs. It uses the word willing, which is a word of agency, of conscious choice, of self-ownership, and it focuses entirely on the behavior in the moment, not on their character, not on the history of their cruelty, not on your pain. And then, this is critical, you follow through, you leave the room. You end the call, you close the conversation, not dramatically, not with a slammed door or a final cutting remark. You simply do what you said, because the narcissist has learned, perhaps through years with you, that your limits are not real. They have learned that if they push, the limit bends. If they cry, the limit dissolves. If they attack, the limit disappears. The single most powerful thing you can do is make your limit real, consistent, predictable, non-negotiable. The first time you do this, they will escalate. Expect it. They will accuse you of being cold, dramatic, childish, or cruel. They will tell everyone you've changed. They will manufacture a crisis. This escalation is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that you are succeeding. It is the system's alarm going off because someone has stopped feeding it. The third category, the validation reversal. Narcissists are, beneath the armor, catastrophically insecure. This is not an excuse for their behavior, so it is a map of their psychology. And sometimes the most powerful move is not to resist the dynamic, but to speak directly to the wound beneath it. This requires emotional sophistication. It requires you to be grounded enough that you can speak from a place of genuine, non-condescending acknowledgement, not to manipulate, but to interrupt the cycle. You say, I can see this matters a great deal to you, not in a mocking tone, not with rolled eyes, with genuine steadiness, and then you pause. You let that land, and you follow it with, and I need the same thing for what matters to me to matter in this relationship too. What this does is extraordinary. It begins by meeting them, which lowers their defensive arousal. It acknowledges the reality that they have emotions driving their behavior, and then it pivots firmly but without hostility to an assertion of equal standing. It says, I see you and I also exist. Narcissists are profoundly threatened by the full personhood of others. In their internal world, relationships are one-directional. Resources flow toward them, not toward the people they're with. The validation reversal gently but unmistakably challenges that architecture. It introduces you as a person, not a prop. Some narcissists will not be able to tolerate this. Their defenses will activate. But some, particularly those who are not at the most severe end of the spectrum, will pause, will shift. Because somewhere beneath the constructed self is a human being who has not been met with that kind of quiet dignity in a very long time. If these words are already changing how you see this dynamic, share this with someone who needs it right now. Save this. Screenshot it. Return to it when that person throws you off balance again. Drop in the comments the word clarity if you've ever felt invisible in a relationship that was supposed to feel safe. And stay, because the most powerful phrases are still coming. The fourth category, the accountability anchor. One of the most disorienting experiences of being in a relationship with a narcissist is the phenomenon known as DARVO. They deny, they attack, and they reverse victim and offender. In other words, when you confront them about harmful behavior, they transform into the one who has been harmed. Suddenly, you were too sensitive, you misunderstood, you provoked them. You always do this. And somehow, by the end of the conversation, you are apologizing for bringing something up. This is one of the most sophisticated psychological maneuvers in the narcissistic toolkit. And it requires a very specific counter. When the reversal begins, when you can feel the conversation turning from your legitimate concern to your supposed crime, you say with quiet firmness, "I understand you're upset, and I still need us to address what I raised before we move to anything else." This sentence does two things simultaneously. It acknowledges their emotional state, which prevents them from accusing you of not caring, of being robotic, of being heartless, and it holds the thread. It refuses to let the conversation be redirected. It plants a stake in the ground that says this conversation has a topic, and that topic doesn't change until we've actually addressed it. You may need to say some version of this sentence multiple times in a single conversation. Each time the diversion comes, and it will come, you return to the anchor. You stay on the thread, not aggressively, not mechanically, but with the kind of focused, grounded persistence that communicates, "I know what I experienced, I know what I need, and I'm not leaving this conversation without it." This technique requires you to be deeply regulated emotionally. If your own nervous system is flooded, if you are angry, frightened, or in the midst of grief, the accountability anchor will be very hard to hold, which is why the inner work of self-regulation is not peripheral to dealing with narcissists. It is the foundation. The words are powerful because of the calm behind them. The fifth category, the identity statement. This may be the most profound shift of all, not a technique for a specific moment, but a foundational reorientation of how you move through every interaction with a narcissist. Most people, when they are in relationship with a narcissist, begin to define themselves in reaction to the narcissist. They think about who they are in terms of who the narcissist says they are or who they need to be in order to survive the relationship. Identity becomes reactive, porous, borrowed. The identity statement is the antidote. In a moment when the narcissist is attempting to redefine you, telling you who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve, you say simply, "That's not how I see myself." 5 words, delivered without anger, without defensiveness, without an invitation to debate. Not, "That's not true," because that opens a fact-checking argument you cannot win with someone committed to their own reality. Not, "You're wrong," because that attacks their position. Just, "That's not how I see myself." This statement is extraordinary in its psychological precision. It asserts that you have a self, that your self is not defined by their narration, that you have looked at yourself and formed a view, and that view is yours, and it is stable, and it is not available for renegotiation in this moment. You can deepen it. You can follow it with, "And I'm not willing to spend my energy arguing about my own value." That second sentence closes the door on a particular kind of narcissistic game and the endless circular debate about your worth, your intelligence, your contribution, your sanity. By naming it and declining to play it, you step entirely outside the frame they built for you. The reason this is so psychologically potent is that it withdraws the one thing every conversation with a narcissist is secretly designed to extract from you, your self-doubt. The narcissist needs you to wonder, to question, to spiral. Your clarity, even imperfect, even momentary clarity, is kryptonite. The sixth category, the strategic silence, I want to talk about something that is not words at all, because sometimes the most powerful communication with a narcissist is the deliberate, chosen, non-reactive pause. When a narcissist says something designed to shock you, wound you, destabilize you, humiliate you, they are baiting a specific reaction. They want volume or tears or frozen compliance. Any of these confirms their dominance. The strategic silence disrupts this entirely. You hold their gaze calmly without aggression, and you say nothing for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, sometimes more, not in defiance, but in genuine steadiness, as if what they said was so far from deserving an immediate reaction that you are taking your time choosing whether to respond at all. And then if you choose to respond, you say, I'm going to need a moment to think about how I want to address that. This sentence following this silence does something almost architectural to the power dynamic. It communicates that you are not at the mercy of their timeline, that you are not so anxious to manage their emotions that you abandon your own processing, that you are a person who thinks before they speak, and therefore a person who cannot be easily manipulated through urgency or pressure. Narcissists create urgency. They manufacture emotional emergencies that require your immediate response, your immediate agreement, your immediate collapse. The strategic silence and the sentence that follows it refuse the emergency. They say, I operate on my own time. I think for myself. I am not in a crisis just because you declared one. The 7th category, the exit protocol. There comes a moment in many interactions with a narcissist when engagement is no longer productive, when the conversation has become a loop, when your words are being recycled as weapons, when staying is costing you more than anything you could possibly gain. This is the moment for the exit protocol, not a dramatic exit, not a performance. A clean, dignified, deliberate departure. You say, I've heard you, I've shared my perspective, I'm going to step away now and give us both some space. Every word in this sentence carries weight. I've heard you. You are not leaving because you refused to listen. You listened. I've shared my perspective, and you are not silenced or suppressed. You spoke. I'm going to step away now, and it's a present tense, active voice, your decision. Give us both some space. This frames the exit not as rejection, but as something offered to both parties. It refuses to be dramatic while being absolutely firm, and then you leave without waiting for their permission, without requiring their understanding, without needing them to agree that you have the right to go. Because here is the deepest truth underneath everything I am telling you today. You do not need a narcissist's permission to exist on your own terms. You do not need them to understand your limits for your limits to be real. You do not need them to validate your experience for your experience to be true. The work, the real work, is not about finding the perfect words to make a narcissist suddenly become the person you need them to be. It is about becoming so grounded in your own identity, so rooted in your own sense of worth, that you can engage with difficult people without losing yourself. You can speak clearly, you can hold your limits, you can exit without drama, and you can do it all from a place of such internal stability that their attempts to destabilize you simply do not find purchase. Why these words work, the psychology behind the power. Let me bring together the psychological principles underlying everything I've shared, because I want you to understand not just the what, but the why. Because when you understand the why, you can adapt these principles to any conversation, any moment, any specific narcissist in your life. The first principle is emotional non-reactivity. Every technique we've discussed is built on the same foundation, that your nervous system is regulated, that you are not flooded, that you have enough internal space to choose your response rather than simply have one. This is not coldness, it is capacity. The most emotionally intelligent people are not those who feel least. They are those who feel most and remain most able to act with intention in spite of what they feel. The second principle is what researchers in social cognition call behavioral disconfirmation. Every time you respond to a narcissist in a way that violates their expected script, you are disconfirming their working model of how you behave, of what you will and will not tolerate, of who you are. Over time, enough disconfirmation rewrites the model. They learn, consciously or not, that the old strategies don't work with you. This doesn't always transform the relationship. Sometimes it simply changes the quality of the combat, but it reliably changes the dynamic. The third principle is self-continuity. Psychologists have documented extensively that a stable sense of personal identity and a clear and coherent sense of who you are, what you value, how you see yourself, is one of the strongest predictors of psychological resilience. When you know who you are, you cannot be told who you are. The narcissist's most powerful tool, the ability to rewrite your sense of self through persistent narrative pressure, simply cannot penetrate someone with genuine self-continuity. And that is why the deepest work you can do, the work that makes every technique in this speech more powerful, is not external, it is internal. It is the daily, patient, sometimes difficult construction of a self that you recognize, that you trust, and that you return to even when the world or a particular person in it tells you to abandon it. The conversation you deserve to have. I want to close with something that sits beneath all strategy, all technique, all carefully calibrated language. You are not reading this because you are weak. You are reading this because you are tired. Tired of leaving conversations feeling like something was taken from you. Tired of rehearsing what you should have said in the quiet hours of the night. Tired of giving the best of yourself to someone who converts it into ammunition. That tiredness is intelligent. It is your nervous system communicating something true. This relationship, this dynamic, this pattern, it is costing more than it is giving. And that signal deserves to be heard, not silenced, not rationalized away, not overridden by the next apology or the next moment of unexpected kindness from the person who has been hurting you. The words I've given you today are tools. They are precise, they are effective, and they are grounded in some of the best understanding we have of how human emotional systems work and how interpersonal power dynamics can be shifted. Use them. Practice them until they feel natural in your body, not just legible on a page. Rehearse them in the mirror with the same seriousness you would bring to any performance that mattered, but know this also. The goal is not to become someone who can survive a relationship with a narcissist indefinitely. The goal is to become someone who knows their own worth so clearly, so deeply, so unshakably, that the question of what to tolerate and what to walk away from becomes simpler than you ever believed it could be. Some narcissists, when faced with these words delivered from genuine groundedness, will shift, not because they suddenly developed empathy they didn't have before, but because the dynamic they depended on has changed. When there is no supply available, even a narcissist must adapt, and adaptation in rare and real cases can open a door to a different kind of relationship. But some will not shift. Some will escalate. Some will recruit others into their narrative of your cruelty or your coldness or your sudden inexplicable change. Some will leave. And I want you to hold this. The departure of someone who was using you is not a loss. It is a reclassification. What you thought was a relationship was a transaction. And transactions that cost you your dignity are not deals worth keeping. The deepest disrespect a narcissist ever showed you was not the insult across the dinner table, or the dismissal in front of your colleagues, or the silent treatment that stretched across days. The deepest disrespect was teaching you to believe you had to earn the right to be treated decently. That love was something you performed for, not something you received simply by existing. The words in this speech are a beginning, but the life that follows, the life where your voice is steady, your limits are real, your self is your own, that life is the real answer to everything a narcissist ever said to make you small. Say these words, mean them, practice them until they are yours, and never, not for a single moment, let someone else's psychological disorder become your emotional address. You were never too much. You were simply around someone who had too little.